This is Hannibal here from TheHannibalTV on YouTube. My co-host today, Gene Sticko, who we all know from News Nation. He just did an appearance with Ross Coulthart, former Air Force veteran, and today we have a special guest. He fights for the truth embargo. He is part of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and the Paradigm Research Group. He's been on all types of documentaries. None other than Stephen Bassett. How are you doing today, sir?
I'm fine. Little hoarse because I've done like 20 some interviews in just the last like 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Yeah, you've been doing a lot related to the movie that just came out last week that I know both you and Gene saw. I was too cheap to pay the $25, but I'm hoping to see it when it goes free. What were your main takeaways from the Age of Disclosure, since we haven't talked about it much on this channel yet?
That's a great question. I I think it's the most important documentary ever done on the subject. Partially because of the timing. The timing could not be better. But it did something that no other doc was really able to do. And because of the timing, they were able to bring together 34 people with highly relevant credentials and backgrounds from politics, from science, from people that worked in the private sector for the government. It's just an incredible array of individuals with very powerful credentials, all saying essentially the same thing, that the phenomenon is real. It's not human. There's non-human tech. We have it. That's 34 people. No doc has come close to that. So the power of it is in that, but obviously it also is powerful because these individuals basically hit all of the major issues, the most major issues, frankly, that we are dealing with. There are many others, of course. And again, put all that into one doc. And then it was done from a Hollywood perspective, meaning a high level production, marketing, and so forth, that ensures that this doc will be seen by millions of people. That wouldn't have been the case if it had come out 20, 25 years ago. But in the modern era, streaming, podcast, all of that, this doc will be seen by millions of people, and therefore it's going to have a huge impression on the disclosure process underway and might be the last thing that triggers the end of the truth embargo.
You were saying earlier this year on many podcasts that you thought disclosure was going to happen this year. Is this movie disclosure to you, or is it just right before disclosure? Where are we at now with disclosure?
What I've mostly said is that how I've phrased it is that right now that the infrastructure has been put in place, almost all of it, that was necessary for a U.S. president to end this embargo in a responsible way, relatively politically safe, I think, and constructive. And there's enough in place to make it convincing and to be followed by other heads of state. That's what I was saying. And that's basically in place. And I've also emphasized that, based on other things we know, that the current president could do it tomorrow. In other words, this is not 1990. It's not 1970s, the Carter administration. This is a whole different time, much more powerful engagement of the issue going on at all levels over the last 7 years. So the president could do it at any time, which obviously could be this year, except that this year is almost over. So it'll probably be next year. But the most important thing is the president now is in a position to step forward at any time and do it. So that's what I'm saying. This film makes it a lot easier. In fact, it may be critical. What the film does that nothing else really has been able to do is to hit the public with a very powerful presentation that justifies the actions they've been seeing. So what do I mean by that? The age of disclosure. Well, let me first mention something here. It's not just a film. Dan Farah is a Hollywood professional. He's worked on A-list productions. He's coming from that world. We've been doing pretty much our own documentaries without those connections for most of the last 70 years. And they've been fine, but they have not had the ability to do what this doc has done. And so essentially, he introduces it at a major film festival, second largest in the country, South by Southwest, the West, a year ago. And then he would get reaction from that. And then the next year is involved in the setting up for the premiere and possibly the marketing situation. Where are they going to go? How are they going to monetize it? Because it has to be monetized. And they finally decide to premiere it on November 21st, the timing of which is ideal, given what is happening in this issue and in politics. But first, because he's Dan Farah, he's able to get on a Bill Maher show. Coveted 10-minute opening interview. That interview, because Bill Maher's Real Time with Bill Maher is the highest cumulative view program on all of Netflix, will ultimately be seen by millions. And it was an excellent interview. Maher is clearly on the side of getting this issue out now. Maher brings up the nuclear shutdown stuff, which is critical. So this is a powerful interview. And then, of course, the show is replayed on CNN with an audience of usually about 1 million. But it goes further because there's an overtime part to the Bill Maher show, Real Time with Bill Maher, called Overtime. And this is done strictly for the internet. You can watch it on YouTube, and it's archived on YouTube, on his YouTube site, Real Time with Bill Maher. And previous overtimes and some of these short clips have accumulated views up to 60 and 70 million. And so that is going to be continuing to follow the movie going forward. All of this exposure to the general public. And then the premiere of the film has done something no other film has been able to do in this subject. It was premiered in 3 theaters, Angelica Pop-Ups, pretty cool theaters, kind of retro, in 3 different cities, major cities. And then they're showing the film for a good deal of time, I forget, a couple of weeks, which meets the requirements necessary for this documentary to be nominated for an Oscar. Will it get nominated? I don't know. Depending upon events that take place, I guess, between now and the nomination time. But that's a milestone, a significant milestone. He did that. But then, because he has the agents and the managers and the connections, and he is who he is, Dan Farah then gets a 2-hour interview on Joe Rogan. Now, that interview, which covers the doc and much more, he goes into a great deal of other information that he got making this documentary, mentioning that there's a 4-hour director's cut, meaning 2 hours had to be taken out of it, meaning there's probably another movie coming. He's talking about that on Joe Rogan for 2 hours. Joe Rogan gets a big audience. Joe Rogan interviewed the president, the vice president. And so his impact on any issue is extraordinary. And that video will probably get seen 15, 20 million easy in the near term. And so essentially, it's not just the film, it is everything about it, how it came out, the person behind it, the ability to get that amount of exposure. And so the core issues, which people watch this video, and I certainly hope they watch Age of Disclosure, all the key issues which have been discussed and investigated over the years, why some people say, well, it's nothing new, it's nothing new. Please. All of these issues are in that film going forward to a large audience at a time when the potential for disclosure from the president is imminent and not really blocked anymore. It's kind of almost the last piece of the puzzle to set the president up completely. The only missing piece now is the other half of the UAP Disclosure Act, which has been resubmitted 3 times. It's going to be resubmitted again with a couple of changes, which might improve its prospects of being passed, in which case we have the entire UAP Disclosure Act at that point. And that is the act and the structure that was set up specifically to get it all out of the military intelligence community and the programs and everything else, all out, everything out in a relatively short amount of time, into reviewed and then put into the public arena and the National Archives. That is how close we are. And that is where we are as this movie is starting to be seen by millions of people. I believe it's, I think, the #1 rental now on Amazon. And at some point they may bring it down to full streaming. I don't know. That's up to them. But they're monetizing it now. But I assure you, the ability of this film to be seen by tens and tens and tens of millions of people is in no way impeded, and that will happen. And so those that are suppressing this truth, managing the truth embargo and all that's in it, need to understand that it's pretty much over. And they can either cooperate with getting the president the opportunity to make this announcement, the disclosure announcement, or they can sit there with their arms folded and defy history, and maybe there will be consequences for that.
Do you think
Yeah.
within that entire context, and you laid it out beautifully. So, the UAPDA is still the unknown factor in how that comes out, or when that comes out, or when that comes forward. What are your thoughts? Because I've thought about this from a sort of politically strategic standpoint. What's the broader scale public reaction to the president doing some form of disclosure in response to the film and the media aspect of it? Or is there a bridge in there where he might say, well, I'm going to form, and considering UAPDA, considering the SAP programs that these align in and their relationship to the executive branch, is there a bridge or an opportunity for him to take advantage to say, well, I'm going to form a bipartisan commission, and in that commission, they address all of the things that we know are needed from the UAP Disclosure Act, but it also gives a little bit of a buffer for, let's say, the personality critics, who won't be satisfied one way or another, of course, but it alleviates it being solely his discretion to a bipartisan move, and sort of creating a political win for everybody involved, both sides of the aisles. Any thoughts on that?
Well, if I was the president, my response would be, I don't need no stinking buffer. All right. He doesn't need a buffer. Secondly, this thing has been, well, everything you're seeing right now, the hearings, the other briefings that have taken place in the Congress, individual Congress people coming forward, the setting up of the UAP task force, and then the setting up of AERO. All of this is, I guess you could say, that commission that you're referring to. There will be a commission, but it will be after disclosure. There's only one disclosure the president can do, and that is confirm the extraterrestrial presence or the non-human technologically advanced presence and the vehicles and so forth. Confirm what Grush and others have said, that we're not alone, essentially. That's the disclosure that he does. After that, we're in the post-disclosure world, and everything changes. And one of the things that one of the many things that will be probably brought up is a commission. God knows they love doing commissions. Of course, the American people are saying, I don't need another commission. I need to start seeing that information. I want to see the docs. I want to see the tech. We want all of this out. We want to be able to utilize it and so forth. But there will likely be a commission. There'll also be hearings. There will be press conferences. There will be a lot of things post-disclosure. All right. But for the president to come out and play it halfway and say, well, I'm thinking about putting a commission together, in that moment, he has just inserted himself as part of the truth embargo. Because people will know, well, there's many people in your administration. There's plenty of people in that documentary that could confirm to you don't need a commission to do it. So you're stalling. Not to mention the fact that the president has at his disposal right now the ability, and I think one of the individuals in the film, I regret who, but I need to watch it about 3 more times, got to burn this into my brain, mentioned what I have been saying for 20 years, that the head of state that confirms this non-human presence and allows then the entire world to engage it and find out the truth of it, right, real time, and without all the nonsense and other stuff mixed in, that president achieves, that head of state achieves one of the most important political legacies of all time. He will have triggered one of the greatest events in all of human history. The accolades and glory and Nobel Prizes, all there. Now, coming out and saying, let's have another commission, that's not going to get you a Nobel Prize.
But after the fact,
yes.
you can see that happening. And I'd imagine, and again, correct me if it's misaligned. I think there's validity in the concern that for the general public that isn't engaged in the issue on a day-to-day basis, outside of this community, and has varying opinions about it that are out there. When disclosure comes, it's going to be drinking through a fire hose for them. And so, is it the government? Does that information flow become manageable? Because, we see in the community, there's so many different aspects of it that people are engaged in and investigating and experienced with. I could just imagine not knowing anything about this, and you've just got this raining down on you from all areas. And how do we keep people focused on what's important now, for what does it mean in your day-to-day life, without maybe causing that overwhelmed response, that I think some fear.
Well, if disclosure had happened in the 60s or the 70s, that would have been a whole different situation in terms of the post-disclosure engagement by the public. It would have been a little more challenging. Back then, if something happened, we saw it on the news at 6:30, might have seen something in the paper, and that was it. That's not the case now. In fact, again, the timing. We have never had a situation on this planet where more people could learn more stuff in the shortest amount of time ever. Right? There will be an unlimited array of resources to go learn about this, whether it's tens of thousands of Kindle books, right? Or unlimited numbers of podcasts in which various people with various levels of expertise are going to be talking about it and discussing it, right? The internet is, of course, in itself a giant AI search machine now. And so the world's people will have about as good a portal to learning about this as you could have dreamed up. Now, does that mean that there will be some people playing around and the debunkers will still be able to play their little games? There'll be some fakes and stuff. Yeah. But learning how to navigate the net and disinformation world is an adult responsibility. And if you can't do it, well, then you're going to be a little bit concerned. I mean, a little bit miffed, perhaps. But understand this. In terms of the ET presence, there's a lot of people that have an inkling of it. But let me assure you, there's very few people that don't know that it's in play, right, worldwide. The idea of UFOs is universally out there and has been worldwide for some time. The idea of extraterrestrials introduced to the world's people by the fact that there have been untold billions of views over the last 80 years of films, some of which are the highest grossing of all time, using the best technology there is, about extraterrestrials in a sci-fi setting.
Speaking of which, what's going on with this Steven Spielberg film that's coming out about UFOs? Just while we're on that subject.
Well, this is another example of another film that's going to address this issue. Now, Steven Spielberg has known about the truth of this for a long time, I'm quite sure, and he has made some of the most important films on the subject, feature films. It wasn't until recently that he finally did a doc, unless you count Taken wasn't a doc. Taken was a feature film that got into not a feature film, but a massive series that got into essentially truth embargo stuff in an interesting way. So he has been on this subject. Recently, though, he produced that four-part UFO Encounters series. That was a nonfiction engagement of the issue. It had some merit, made some mistakes, but he clearly had stepped into that at that point. Then he announced another film coming up. A big deal kind of announcement with no name, a lot of run-in. This thing has been promoted and known about for some time. It's obviously a major enterprise of his. It's had 3 working names, but the most important working title during this period is Disclosure, which I'll just give a capital D to. Thank you, Stephen. I think I know what disclosure means in that context. So I assume this film is going to be a very powerful feature film addressing some of the key issues that we have been dealing with from various angles. I don't think it's going to be another ET, the extraterrestrial. I can assure you it's going to be powerful. It's going to be a big deal, and it's going to make a ton of money. Meanwhile, Bruckheimer has announced that he's got a major film coming around the same time, all of which says something that I've been saying for a couple of decades. The major people in the industry have known about this for a long time. They could have made hugely expensive or at least very, very high quality documentaries on this and advanced the issue. They chose not to. I believe they chose not to because why do you poke the government bare on this issue when you know how sensitive the government is, when you can make a fortune off fictional ETs in these incredible sci-fi movies? And so they played it safe, but now they feel it's safe enough to get involved, and they are getting involved. And this film is an example. I don't know about Bruckhammer's film, but I have a feeling he's going to take advantage of all these developments, as are others. Let me say this. The torrent of content that will be created post-disclosure, both in feature films and documentaries, is hard to describe. I helped co-found with Dan Harari the new Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, specifically to help that happen. But most importantly, to help the UAP people, my colleagues and friends, the people you know, who are not part of the great film industry, right, Hollywood and so forth, who have to do their own things, right, which of course you can increasingly do because of the tech and so forth, but overall not able to really participate in the big projects. We're hoping to get those together so these big filmmakers and streaming content creators can take advantage of the researchers doing all the work for the last 20 years. And so that's why HDA has been put together, but I have no fear that that will happen pretty much. And so there will be a massive amount of information coming forward, all that you could possibly want. Now, it's up to the individual to manage how much time they want to devote to it, and what, or to vote, to engage it at all, what sources they choose so they can get a proper understanding. But overall, the quality and the truthfulness of the information post-disclosure is going to be much more abundant and much more easy to identify. And so the world is going to educate itself using these incredible tools that we have put together over the last, we're already going back to the mid-1990s. That's when it really took off. There is practically nobody in the planet. You could be living in a village in the middle of the Amazon. You could be getting your sci-fi from one of the satellites, and you could be watching, you know, documentaries and films on this subject. Nobody. But the one thing I want to reiterate was that the ET created sci-fi is what absolutely educated the entire human race to the idea of ETs, and that we're not alone. And that, while it's fiction, don't downplay it, because it has got that idea in place. And then the post-disclosure world is going to plug right in to that fundamental awareness. And as soon as they realize that the ETs in question are not as bad as the really bad ones in the films, and there's some really bad ETs in those movies, ETs you don't want to ever get in the same room with, but these aren't like that. And then we move forward. So I'm confident, but it's a massive thing. No one could possibly describe it. I think, even in a book, they would need a lot of time to really be able to present what is about to happen post-disclosure. I'm just gonna hang with it and enjoy it.
And the HDA, you know, Natalia and I are members, and we've been involved a couple of months now. You know, you're right. There is some heavy hitting talent in there as far as the folks, producers, writers,
Sure.
the people that make everything happen behind the scenes, you know. And I think that's an important thing about what HDA brings to the table, because it's you know, not just the community of people who are interested, but it's the community of people who can structure things in the most responsible way to ensure that the truth gets out.
I like that analogy. Look, we're trying to set more places at the table. We want more people at that table talking with the best of the UAP citizen world and the best of the film content world. And I think we're having some progress there. Instance, I think we're about to pick up, I think we already have, Willie Nelson is going to become a founding member. I think on the Hollywood side, he's really into the issue. Thank you, Willie. And by the way, still going strong at 92. He just did a 35, I think, city tour with Bob Dylan this year. But even though there's good talent, let's just talk about the Hollywood Disclosure, the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance Hollywood founding members. Hollywood stands in for the whole entertainment content creating world, which is us and Canada and UK and India, everybody, but it's based in Hollywood. That there is a lot of, but there are several levels of talent and capability and connections and funding ability and so forth above that. And we're hoping to eventually get them to join in and be members of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance as well. We're getting, I assure you, with few exceptions, and that will improve, but we're really getting some of the most serious people in the UAP world. Now, there's a number of people in this in the UAP side that are my colleagues that haven't decided to be part of the HTA, maybe never will be. But I have a feeling as we continue to grow, we're 250 members, and as more of the content creating individuals of some renown get involved, I think the UAP people will get involved, even the highest level. And that's important. We want everybody at the table. We're a nonprofit. We don't get any action in any of these deals. We're not partners in anything other than that nonprofit. In order to bring these people together, we have a mild amount of dues that we collect from members, and we're hoping as a 501c3, the HDA at some point will attract the attention of any one of God knows how many thousands of millionaires or multimillionaires living in LA and Hollywood and the Beverly Hills to come in and say, that's a righteous project. They do this all the time and fund this. But let me tell you, over the last 80 years, getting good people who want to do good and help the world and everything else to view this subject as a righteous project under the incredible, impact of the massive truth embargo and the undermining of this issue by our own government is been tough. They just weren't able to do it. That's what's helped to drag this out. An unfunded activist movement is not going to be effective. We're now getting to the point where I think that a river will be crossed. And when that kind of money starts coming in to a range of organizations, there's a number of nonprofits now that are now engaging this issue in a robust and formal way. When that funding starts coming in, if we haven't had disclosure yet, then boy, it's going to help ensure that we get it. But more importantly, it's that funding, which is needed from the industry, from scientific organizations, is going to be most useful in the post-disclosure world. Absolutely. When we want everybody involved there. We just don't want a couple of big companies and corporations and a couple of departments of the government coming in and saying, okay, the truth, you got it. We're not alone. Now just leave it to us, right? We'll take it from here. We don't like a lot of competition. No, the post-disclosure world needs the biggest possible table we can have.
And that's why I want Hannibal involved in, get Hannibal there to the, hold on, I'm going to bring him in. That's why Hannibal, you got to get involved in Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. And I'm going to nominate you to be the Sergeant at Arms and make sure everything parliamentary order is maintained.
There you
Absolutely.
go. Stephen, as far as To the Stars Academy, they have Jim Semivan involved. He talks about his incident that he had, some type of abduction incident with him and his wife. He never goes into that much detail, but I heard you on another podcast saying a little something more about that. Is there anything you could share about that incident? He's a former CIA high-ranking member. For anyone,
25 years director of operations of something. Yeah. Well, Jim Semivan came out on the original 10 in the To the Stars Academy of Arts and Sciences, which was kind of like a launch vehicle in a sense, first stage launch vehicle. It launched a number of people into this issue and got some attention, but it wasn't going to be the vehicle that was going to, how would you say, take it all the way to disclosure. So eventually it's kind of pared back. It's now just the To the Stars, and it's more focused, I think, on entertainment. I think Jim may be still on that board group there, and that's fine. But several others have moved on because they had to be involved in stuff where they had to be operating more independently. Lou Elizondo Mellon, even Gary Nolan and so forth. But Jim has kind of stayed back. As a longtime CIA guy, you can kind of appreciate that. There's a lot of people that are a little twitchy about the CIA, but he was bold enough to indicate that he was a contactee. He's had those experiences. He's had extraordinary sightings, including with his wife. And let me tell you, there are a lot of Jim Semivans in the United States government, either presently or retired. Lots of them who have had contact as contactees, who have seen extraordinary craft. Not surprisingly, those working in intelligence services and maybe even the military and what have you, don't call up the local media and ask for an interview. We have no idea the full scope of the engagement of this issue on an individual basis of people working in the military, in the intelligence services, even politicians. I think one day we're going to find out, oh my God, who could have imagined it? Because ETs don't single out any group. If they're making contact with people, they make contact with anybody they want. And as far as sightings, anybody can have a sighting. And people in military and other agencies are in a much better position to maybe have a sighting. They go all over the world. They're in all kinds of projects and so forth. Jim Semivan is one of those who said, hey, yeah, I had one. I'm even a contactee, which was great. Because when a longtime major player in the CIA is willing to say, I'm a contactee, that's a message to all the other contactees out there. Buck up a little bit. It's coming. You will have your day. There are plenty of people in government that believe you. They just can't call you up and tell you. And so Jim's one of my heroes, as are many other the individuals that have been leading this movement since 2017.
I heard him say that the beings that he was involved with were cloaked beings that looked almost like Grim Reaper type cloaks. Are you familiar with what breed that might be? Because we heard Eric Davis recently talk about 4 different breeds in a public hearing that I believe you were actually at: the insectoids,
Sure.
the Greys, the Nordics, and something else, which I forget the 4th one.
One of the great moments of the last days of the Truth of Bargo, right? Again, I all the stuff is filmed, so they're going to be some filmmakers putting some serious money together and grabbing all the stuff. They're going to create some great docs, and I hope some of that money will go to, or they'll employ or fund some of our, Ron James and James Fox and Darcy Weir and our heroes, right? But one of the moments is that's the third. No, that's not a hearing. That was a special event held in one of the briefing rooms on the Hill. I forget which building. That was sponsored by the UAP Disclosure Fund, I believe, moderated by Lou Elizondo. And you had about 6 or 7 individuals that presented, and sitting next to them were members of Congress. So it was essentially a kind of meeting of both sides. Okay. And so one of the individuals there was Eric Burleson, who has made great major accomplishments to this issue. He's steadfastly behind it, and has been an all-around good guy on this. And he's sitting there next to Davis, and at some point he just turns to him and says, Dr. Davis or Eric, we've heard that there are certain types of aliens, different types. So what types are they? And Eric just looks at him and says, oh, yeah. You got your insectoids, you got your reptoids, you've got your Nordics, and you've got your Greys. And I'm thinking, this is being live streamed, by the way, on CNN or a couple of, this is going out to the world. This is a moment. I don't know if Representative Burleson realizes what a moment it was. I hope he does. But I love the innocence of the question. He's just an open guy. He wants to get the information out. He's not biased on it. He's trying to learn. And so he does what a lot of people might do if they had a person like Eric and next to him. They say, what types of ETs are there? You can actually go online and Google what types of ETs on there, and you can get images of the yin-yang of people that have drawn them and paint them. But everybody is not on the same level, and that includes members of Congress. And so for many of them, for that moment, I was just seeing a member of Congress who's trying to advance this issue ask a basic question and suddenly learn, oh, what? Okay. I loved it. And there will be many more moments like that as everyone, one way or another, regardless of who they are, where they work, what their rank or station is, starts to learn things they didn't know or have things they did know but weren't sure about confirmed. It's going to be an interesting time.
Now, you mentioned Lou Elizondo was at that. He's friends with Gene. They just had drinks together not too long ago. But what do you have to say about the recent controversies of Mr. Elizondo? Because I think it was at that meeting where he accidentally disclosed some false information. What do you why do you think he didn't research that enough in that particular case?
Okay, well, let's start with this. If Gene is a friend of Lou's and you're going to have some drinks with him, give him my regards, say hello,
Well,
right? I greatly appreciate what he's done. All right. Now, to answer your question, tricky question, complicated. All right. The people that were going to take this issue home, take the mantle in a way from all of the citizen science researchers and activists, including me, are going to be coming out of significant programs and departments and agencies of the government, taking chances, taking risks, right? Because it was still, even as late as 2017, it was going to be no easy ride. Ask David Grush, he didn't really hit until 2023. They were going to be in for a rough time. These are intense people, complicated people doing complicated work, and they're coming into a realm that is virtually alien to them. You know, pun intended, I guess. And so there is a range of complicated individuals with interesting pasts that are shouldering this issue now. Lou Elizondo is, I think, a little special for a number of reasons. One, his background and the work that he was doing undercover for the Army in multiple areas of engagement, that's very intense, complicated background. Let's say the least. All right. He's seen a lot, done a lot, probably has a little PTSD. Not an easy gig. So it's great that other people are willing to do it. And then when he comes forward as part of the original 10, and then eventually separates out, but from that early days on, he, for whatever reason, ended up being the one that was going to be engaging the people. Not Christopher Mellon, right? Not Gary Nolan. It was kind of like set to Lou that he was going to do the podcasts, lots more interviews, and engage the general public on this issue. Well, let me tell you something. I could, and this, I mean this half seriously, but if I was given a choice between going into Iraq undercover to deal with some serious issues there and resolve them, or I could simply go on the internet and pour my truth out and my background out to untold hundreds of millions of people who have the ability to troll anybody at any time in any way you can imagine, oftentimes from anonymous handles on any number of social media platforms, and have to stay with that and deal with that and the consequences of that, which is like having, your life just sort of open really up in a sense. I'd take the Iraq deal. I'd go to Iraq, right? This is tougher in a way. You get hit with 1,000 cuts instead of maybe, an RPG. And so he has been weathering that since 2017. And there are plenty of people on the net that have every desire to undermine this issue in every way, bring it down, bring the people down, because for whatever reason, the idea of the extraterrestrial presence just drives them crazy. Or they know there's ETs here, but this is how they make their living. This is how they get their likes. Or they're actually operating the benefit of the government. I don't know, but they're out there. And he probably got the hardest work over of anybody. And he was affected. His family was affected. So if he even burps or makes any mistake, right? Burps at Thanksgiving dinner, it's on X the next day. And there's videos or like cartoon AI shit kind of being put up there, making fun of it, which, by the way, is the new thing. If you're not ready to be parodied with AI cartoons and AI videos that look like you and have your voice, but are doing stupid stuff, well, you need to either get out of this or change your name.
I already have that. I've had that done to me already, so I'm already in that boat.
And so Lou has had a tough time. He's made some mistakes. Oh, wow. Gee, who thought, right? We made a mistake in Vietnam. We went there. So one of the things that happened, one of the number of things that happened in the Age of Disclosure documentary, and there were many key things, such as the fact that Robert Jacobs and Robert Salas were there, both two major nuclear weapons or nuclear interference or tampering by ETs, who very well will testify before Congress. That highlighted that. That was fantastic. The mention of the fact that George W. Bush was engaged on this issue, right? I think there was even discussion brought up about Trump being engaged on this issue. These are all important parts of this film. Okay. But one of the things that happened in this documentary, if you were paying attention, was that Jay Stratton and some others basically said that what Lou Elizondo was saying and what he was doing was true. There were misunderstandings. People didn't get it right. The debunkers jumped in. They're digging, looking for any angle. And so the idea was, nah, he wasn't this. He didn't run that. That didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. And they went on. And basically they said, no. Basically, the fundamental information that was brought forward by him and others related to him was true. In other words, they took his back. Now, that doesn't mean that they're happy with everything that Lou has done or said in this time. It's just that they're saying, look, this guy had a tough job. He communicated this issue. He helped us to put this documentary together, right? He was the one that lined up the witnesses for Dan Farah. He didn't have access to those people. And as he got more important people, others were willing to join, and you ended up with the 34. And so what can I say? Yeah. Not everybody has the, how would you say, broad perspective on this that I have. I have nothing to do but simply watch videos, watch the internet, watch the news, archive thousands of articles about it. I have no other life. I don't expect anybody to follow in my footsteps. But because I'm able to see the larger picture, I'm not taken in by the threads that the internet just pumps out constantly. Here's the thing. Person said that. Let's look at it. Let's find a video from 20 years ago. Wait a minute. How about this thing on Reddit? Let's bring that in and see what we can do and have fun without really thinking about the consequences to the individuals that they're trolling or talking about by name, and in some case defaming them. Not that there's anything you can do about internet defamation unless you're worth about 15 million bucks or more. Don't even bother. They don't think about that. I think.
Yeah, and you know, and there's the aspect. Listen, even the small amount of, you know, comparative interviews and things that I've done, and, you know, story getting around, you know, even with the best intentions, I see people, you know, they grab pieces of information from here and there, and they put together, you know, a great introduction. And sometimes I'm like, oh, that's not quite right. Oh, that's a little out of context. But you know, that's what happens. And I think, you know, in these cases, just like you said, everybody wants to, or the people that are doing this, they're looking for anything that strikes at credibility, other than focusing on, you know, the core issues, right? Focusing on attacking the person rather than attacking the position.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's
certainly a victim of this.
That's the absence of an argument. But the events of recent times, and there's been some pretty profound international and domestic events and issues, have slowed down the process. It could have been wrapped up much sooner, frankly, but it slowed it down. And so everybody involved are now much slower moving targets. And as a result, the internet is, I say the internet, the massive array of individuals on the internet, which includes a whole lot of people that want to go after this issue, and the people in it have had a good deal of time to do so. And you're going to be seeing very soon very sophisticated AI generated, not only what we'll call cartoons or anime, but also actual videos with likenesses and everything else, parroting these individuals, going after them, having some fun, right? And you're also going to see.
Look at all the Avi Loeb videos out there now, and Dr. Michio for the 3-Eye Atlas. There's so many fake AI videos of them.
Well, yeah, fake stuff and internet slop is a given. But in terms of what I call targeted, sophisticated parody, there's everybody in the public space better get used to that. And we know a lot of people in the very high public space that are getting parodied like you wouldn't believe. But guess what? This issue is important enough, and these individuals are well known enough that now they're going to be seeing their share of that, and they're going to have to weather that storm. And then the other point I'll make is that, yeah, there's going to be misunderstandings and mistakes. That people get something wrong, they write it up wrong, and they create an interview for their podcast and get a little wrong. That's going to happen. That's not a big deal, right? What I'm concerned about is that people are deliberately, right, saying falsehoods and creating angles on the people in the field designed to harm them and to hurt them, not to clarify anything. And these individuals out there, we know who they are. I don't engage them because I'm just a guy who doesn't like to get into fights, and nothing comes from that. But they're getting a lot more action, and it's going to probably peak soon, I think. And then disclosure solves that problem. All right. I think post-disclosure, the overall public is going to be generous with all of the individuals that have fought this fight, that have tried to bring this truth, even their mistakes, even their, took a detour and probably shouldn't have gone there and had to come back. That happens. I think that the general public is going to be very generous with us. And I think they're going to probably be generous with the U.S. government. And the what it faced and the decisions it had to make while we were under an 80-year nuclear arms race. They may not be so generous with any of the skeptibunkers who continue to cling to the modality they've chosen after disclosure, and saying, okay, well, you were right, but I'm going to point out all the flaws and all the stuff I can dig up on you, and I'll make a few things up. They're not going to be very generous with that. And maybe they'll just kind of fade into the background and become a positive part of the post-disclosure world. Because most of these debunkers and skeptibunkers, they know a lot about the issue because they've had to do a lot of research and work in order to, get their angles and do stuff. And they've learned a lot over time. They just haven't either are willing to admit or haven't figured out yet. It's true. Mm-hmm. Once disclosure happens, I think everybody's going to hopefully agree it's true. The moon is not made of green cheese, and this is true.
Yeah, and you touch on something that I've been thinking about. What are the odds? What are the risks? Let's say that the president is going to make disclosure, and people like yourself and folks that have been pursuing this and studying and advocates for the last 20 years. Suddenly get sidelined because Elon Musk's has got 4 or 5 guys, who've been sitting in the background who are, physicists and whatnot, and they can easily dissect this, that, and the other. Sure. That almost those like you and so many others who have been integral to this just get run over by the machine, the new machine that attempts to be formed out of this. And how do we protect those legacies, I guess?
Well, I wouldn't use run over by the machine, but I like sideline. The sidelining has already begun. All right, trust me. This is not unusual, particularly when you've got a movement as long as this one. I mean, it's 80 years on. But the whole idea of this movement, in fact, almost every movement, is to get the mainstream society and organizations, people of importance and what have you, power and governance, to accept the fundamental goal of the activist movement, which is to then embrace it and say, oh, yeah, no, this is what we need to do. Let's do it. Right. So as you're trying to get these people to finally get involved, these are the people that have the degrees and the funding and great experience here and there, very accomplished individuals. Not that there aren't people in our field that aren't accomplished. It's almost like you're passing the mantle. All right. In other words, the idea was to get congressional hearings, but we weren't going to be on the congressional panel, and very few of us were going to be on the hearing. But we're getting the hearings. All right. The idea is to get top scientific entities to engage this issue the way they should have years ago. But we're not going to be the scientists that are going to be doing that work. And so the mantle is going to be passed. Now, one of the problems in this, and that's not awful, because normally activist movements the people, the high-end people in it, the one that have done a lot of work, that work is valued, and they're able to find ways to engage the issue going forward. But in this movement is unlike any other in the history of activism. All right, there may be something similar. If somebody brings it to my attention, I'll certainly look into it. Is that you have an 80-year activist movement, enormous effort on the part of thousands, tens of thousands of people, in order to get the United States government, or all governments really, but the focus primarily is the U.S., to end a policy that is wrong, that is ultimately destructive. Initially, not so much, but as time went by, got worse and worse. Nothing unusual about that. But while they're doing it, the government is denying there's nothing there. In other words, you're out of your mind. You're crazy. You're trying to get us to do something about something that doesn't even exist. I mean, that's like the United States government, the federal government, telling all the civil rights activists in the 20th century, why are you doing this? There's no segregation in the South. There are no segregation laws. Everybody's fine. Why are you doing this? You would have to be crazy to do this. Only it's worse than that, because we're talking about ETs. We're talking about some pretty exceptional, unusual stuff. And so everybody involved was treated as they were nuts. They were demeaned. They were ridiculed. They were laughed at in every form or fashion, on TV, in books. All right. And by the skeptics, God knows, the heavy duties, the classes, and so forth. 80 years of being laughed at and demeaned. Well, not 80 years. Things have gotten better in the last 7, certainly 70. I don't care if you had a PhD, didn't matter. Crazy PhD person. Or if you were an accomplished artist, nuts. Right? And if you're just a regular person, oh man, are you throwing your life away? 80 years of that. And now it turns out we're right. And all that work was meaningful. And all that research should be completely reviewed and brought into the mainstream world and approached by scientists and political scientists and whatever. But here's the problem. There is a mindset amongst many in the what we'll call mainstream world that's going to have to embrace this. And it's one of these illogical, but very illogical and irritating things, is that for most of the last 80 years, crazy people were saying stuff. It turns out what they were referring to was true. But anybody crazy enough to be doing that back then and being demeaned that way, it is not somebody we want to deal with. You're kind of, even though you're right, you're tainted. Okay? In other words, you can be right about something, the internet can break you. It can destroy you anytime for being right. But this is a broader sense of that. And so it's like, why do we want these crazy people involved? Now we got the new manna. Let them just go find something else to do. We'll take it from here. Does that bother me? You can't imagine how much that bothers me. Now, believe me, I've got colleagues far more accomplished than I, that have done far more than I, that have credentials above mine. They're going to be facing the same thing. All right. As a kind of a renegade, my own boss kind of guy, I don't have necessarily the restrictions that some may have, but believe me, I'm going to have to fight for any contributions I can make very soon. And so that is why one of the decisions I have made as a man of some age, we don't need to go into the actual number, but it's a lot bigger than you think it is based on what you're seeing on this screen right now. Got an X amount of time left. So the Paradigm Research Group, which is a 501c3 now, it's a nonprofit. I've gotten some nonprofit donations. I'm capable of handling any number of such nonprofit tax-deductible donations. There's a portal on my website, or get in touch with me directly. If I'm able to raise funding, the principal thing I plan on doing in the post-disclosure world, certainly, but even in the last perhaps weeks, months, or whatever of the pre-disclosure world, is finding ways to help ensure that the people that did all the damn work while the government's going, we know nothing, are going to get recognized. They're going to get opportunities hopefully have more. And that's what the HDA is about, but in that one area, but will not be ignored by the mainstream and dismissed. That we can help get support for them, back them up, take their back, whatever, to ensure that they're going to have a place in the post-disclosure world and the work's not going to be shoved off to the side and forgotten. It's like, yeah, that was great research back in the 60s and 70s, but we've got it now. Let's just burn those files. Now, some of these archives are being archived. I mean, some of these files and records are being archived in the archives of the impossible at Rice. And no, his name escapes me right now, but he's also, there's several other archives being created. Good. We need a lot more than that. We need a lot more funding for that, because this is a massive archive of unbelievable work and documents about something that's the most important issue in the world. And the idea that it doesn't deserve all of the attention that any similar thing in other issues would get, because it's an ET thing, and and you were kind of weird to do it. Jesus, no. And so that's where I'm going to devote a lot of my time. How can I, do that? There's the Contact in the Desert. We're trying to encourage them to give out more awards. They've given out a number of them. I gave out 40 some awards and during my X conferences in the 1990 aughts. If I can get the funding and do another X conference, I get a lot more awards to give out. All right. And that's just a way of saying, look, we got to cover each other's back. We got to back each other up, because this is not a typical activist movement. And if you want to have a life in the post-disclosure world dealing with the issues you love, we're going to have to work together, come together, support each other, or we're going to be shoved right out the door. All right. Thank you for your service, and retire if you can. I certainly can't. I couldn't even afford a small rented room in,
You won't need to worry about that, because Elon Musk says we're not going to have to work in another 10 years. Did you hear that?
I'm sure that's going to happen. Yeah. Look, I don't want to pick on him. It's like what I'd like to see Elon Musk do is starting to put some money behind the people that have done this work to help us out.
He doesn't believe in it, though, right?
No, he knows there's an ET presence, but his current position is but then if you're trying to get billion-dollar contracts to build rocket-powered craft to maybe go to Mars, you're not going to be eager to sort of help the world learn that, whoops, there's anti-gravitic craft that can take you to Mars, and they're not Elon Musk now. So you're going to kind of hold back on that, but don't be surprised if post-disclosure, when the confirmation of anti-gravitic craft made by defense contractors becomes a real, and that idea being monetized and commercialized, Elon Musk is there. Boom. And the next day, the Elon Musk anti-gravitic project is underway and actually been under planning for a long time. He is not going to allow himself to be left behind. And when you're worth $500 billion, you don't get left behind. But right now, he is not going there. I get it. I'm not going to criticize him for that. I mean, he's got billions of dollars tied up in an X, and a lot of people working for him. The idea that he's going to undermine that. But I hope that at some point, he will start spreading some of that wealth around the people that have done all this work to help them do more work, and also to help get them acknowledged.
Absolutely. Hey, Hannibal, you jump in there.
Yes.
First, shout out to Skywatch Signal on there. But Steve, as you were talking about archiving the all of the information that's come out, the first thing that popped to my mind, I said, what we need to do is build some giant memorials and carve into stone all of the technological advancements that we've made.
Maybe have you ever carved any?
Deserve it. Right?
Have you ever carved anything in stone?
I haven't, but once we have disclosure, perhaps we'll have the technology and we can do it really fast and with extraordinary precision.
It is a voice-activated machine. Yeah, it's a voice-activated machine where you just tell it what to carve and it just carves away.
Just a 3D printer.
I'm telling you, there are so many things. For instance, let me give you an example. Post-disclosure. Hopefully somebody will donate millions and millions of dollars. I don't know how much it'll take. 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Millions of dollars. To do what? To do a complete survey of all of the contactee reports that are extant, right? Everything, including reviewing all of the letters and emails that have gone to researchers like Strieber and others that are in file somewhere. Obviously, they're private, but there's ways to utilize them, right? Get permission or whatever, and do a massive survey of all of it, and then be able to put forward an understanding assessment of what these individuals experienced, what happened to them, what they saw, and what have you. If they were creating hybrid babies, let's get that there too.
What about Charles Hall? Would you invest in Charles Hall?
Look,
Have you heard of him? The tall white guy?
I'm not the man to say this, that, or whatever. I'm simply saying that this is a project that must be done, but it is expensive. This would be extremely expensive, and we don't have the money to do that. But post-disclosure, there are plenty that will. And so that's just one of many things that, and I could go on and on and on, that need to be done. And the idea that they're going to be done, and none of the people that have been writing the books and doing the research for 50 years are just not going to be able to participate. Let me give you a perfect example. I believe this is true. And if I'm wrong, I apologize. But I learned that at some point during the early days of the UAP Disclosure Act coming together, right after it passed, that I think someone may have proposed Richard Dolan to be on the presidential UFO review panel. An absolute righteous choice. And some numbnuts basically raised the point, he doesn't have a PhD. We can't have somebody that doesn't have a PhD. Ugh. What can I say? This is the kind of narrow-minded stupidity that has got us where we are today. So let's not go there. Let's see if we can do better than that. And that's going to be a mindset. And PRG is going to do what he can to help that mindset be what we would like to have.
Well, I wanted to ask you about what the agenda might be, but I think we're out of time for today. So I guess hopefully I'll have to have you back another time. So maybe you could tell us more about that. But I'll let you close this down with whatever you want to tell the fans. Thanks for joining us and answering the questions.
Thank you, Hannibal. Look, one thing for sure, I'm a co-sponsor of a very important event that's happening very soon. It's December 14, 17. It's online. The next 5 of these events will be in cities around the world. This is the reincarnation of the State of the World Forum conducted in the early 1990s, under the aegis of the Gorbachev Foundation. Jim Garrison, who was the president of the Gorbachev Foundation, and also the president of the State of the World Foundation or Forum back then, they put on 6 major events where very, very high-level people were able to examine the state of the world at that time, post the collapse of the Soviet Union, and look forward to what we could go, what we could do. They were very significant. Now he's going to bring it back. Why? Because the disclosure event that is unfolding right now and pending is probably 100 or 1,000 times more significant than the collapse of the Soviet Union, to be honest with you. All right. And so now they're going to be bringing people, 51, I think, panelists over 3 days. You can watch it all and also get the full record of it to discuss the ranges of issues to look at. But there's some new categories that weren't there in the 1990s. Psionics, artificial intelligence, and of course, non-human intelligence, and the UAP issue and so forth. And so the State of the World .forum is the website for the State of the World Forum. Go there, check it out. It's a beautiful website, huge amount of information, and you may want to consider registering and being part of it. You can also set up a Skywatch party. There's information about that. And because I'm a co-sponsor, and because you guys are buddies, and I want to support you and all of your followers, I, as a co-sponsor, do have a code, PRG95, PRG95. When you register, you will be asked for a code. Put that in, you'll save a chunk of money.
Yeah, well, I'm already registered. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to join in there. And that was Hannibal. We want to get that up. PRG95
for your followers, for your
posterity. Yeah,
that will help. Right? It's kind of so. that's coming. There's so much else happening, but I'm going to be out in LA from December 8th to December 20th. So if I'm out there, people hear this, you want to check out, give me a call, maybe get together. And I'm going to be trying to make some connections again. I'm still hoping to maybe do some things in the film industry. I took a run at it 2001 to 2004, maybe late 3, and got my head handed to me, right? Everybody got their head handed to me, but the timing was bad. We were trying to do UAP related stuff, could have been a big deal. And then the pandemic went to level 2, and then the strikes came in, and most of the people I knew then are now driving Ubers. So I'm thinking about maybe taking another run at it.
A whole other show. But thanks once again, Hannibal. It close it out. I just wanted to throw in my 2 cents and thank you and thank everybody. And I hope to certainly cross paths again. I'll be I'm down in DC early next week too, for a couple of days. So we'll
sure
look forward to catching up. Otherwise, I'll see you perhaps at the State of the World.